I'm Chan with Technology Associates. Eric, who normally moderates this series, is off to a meeting in Philly, so I'm taking over his duties. Also want to apologize for technical difficulties that we experienced yesterday. Yeah, we'll just go ahead and get started. This is a topic that I know is very important issue to Eric, especially as a small business owner. We have awesome benefits here at TA, and that is due in large part to the guidance and consulting that Insperity has given us over the years. With the Affordable Care Act on the horizon for businesses, we felt that this would be an awesome topic to bring to our audience. So we have Jeff with Insperity on the line, and without further ado, I'll let him take it away.
Thank you, Chan. And thank you, everybody, for joining, and my apologies as well for our trouble yesterday. Hopefully this has made it to you, and you'll get the value from this segment of the series that you were hoping you would. Just a quick word as to why I and we at Insperity were the ones invited for this, in case you're unfamiliar with our company. We are a human resource provider for small to medium-sized companies. And of course, as part of HR, benefits is quite central, and so therefore we have some long-running experience in that realm. And then, of course, the Affordable Care Act. Over the last few years, we've been focused on heavily for our clients and for ourselves, and we have a different perspective on it than the open market does or might. So hopefully today's presentation will give you some good information, not be too repetitive of things you've already read or seen in the past about the new law, and with any luck you'll walk away with a better grip on the whole thing. And so with that, I will begin. Our presentation is designed to give you kind of a high-level understanding of healthcare reform, and most importantly, where the rubber meets the road, what the impact may be on your business this year and next year and beyond. The agenda for our presentation is, as I noted, a general overview of the new legislation, critical decisions and considerations for this year and beyond, as broken into 5 different pieces. Healthcare reform action items. Toward the end of our slides, you'll see some considerations, some things that you may or may not already have thought about or be doing, but that you might want to. And then finally, your business strategy and how all of this kind of ties into that and the best path forward. So first of all, impact to your business. Provisions starting in 2010 and then rolling all the way through 2018. Things to think about include, and are not limited to, new mandates and statutes, questions of access to affordable quality coverage, new taxes, penalties, fees, and credits that are associated with the Affordable Care Act, and then reporting and administration and compliance concerns and how that looks, or what it looks like depending on your group size. So at the bottom of your screen, impact to business owners, you'll see 3 different categories, the 3 C's as we call them: complexity, compliance, and cost. Really, all of the moving parts of the new law in one way, shape, or form are going to tie back into these buckets, into one of them or all of them. So you'll see throughout the coming slides, most of the themes we're touching on are going to fall into one of these 3 buckets, and all 3 of them are, of course, areas of concern if you are a business owner or business manager and you're maintaining employees and a health and welfare program. So the 5 categories, starting out, critical decisions, considerations for this year, the individual mandate component of healthcare reform. And many of you are probably already familiar with it, but what it is, it's a primary underpinning of healthcare reform. It says that effective of January this year, all individuals must purchase qualifying health coverage, and there are very few exceptions that can apply. And how that's being enforced, or will seek to be enforced, will be via a penalty for failure to comply as collected through an individual's income, federal income tax return. And you can see here kind of the scale, both in terms of individuals through family and then this year through 2016, what those penalties look like. This first year, 2014, the individual penalty for failing to get into the system would be $95. So not a ton of money, probably not enough to change behavior on a very, very widespread basis. But that escalates pretty quickly. As you can see, into 2015 and into 2016, by the time you get there, you're looking at $695 for an individual and nearly $2,100 penalty for family. So in the coming couple of cycles, we believe the individual mandate is going to be a very weighty component of healthcare reform as it was designed to be. Now, the question, if you're a small business owner, is how does this affect me and my company and all of my participants potentially? And it relates to the individual mandate simply inspiring increased participation on your plan. So in the example on screen, very generic, 40-employee company offers health coverage, has 30 of the 40 people presently on their plan, therefore 10 employees not partaking in the plan, and supposing about a $5,000 subsidy by the company for each participant. Well, under the individual mandate, suppose it inspires all 10 of those not currently enrolled people to join your plan. Well, now your costs are going to increase commensurately. So that 10-employee supposition times 5,000 equaling 50,000, not a small amount of money. This is a cost driver. This piece can be very significant, and this is before we really even get into the other inflationary components or potentially inflationary components of healthcare reform, which we are going to touch on here further into the presentation. But you can see how that can drive cost in a significant way potentially. So, critical considerations under the individual mandate, questions to ask yourself. Are you prepared to answer your employees' questions? Will the penalty change your employees' behavior this year? Meaning, is it going to be this year where there's a great change, or will it be in the coming year or two? Will more employees and their dependents enroll in your offering, and what will that do, or what might that do to your total healthcare cost as an employer? So things to think about. Next, what we call the employer shared responsibility piece of healthcare reform, or play or pay as it's most commonly known. Simply, it's a reference to the mandate that, depending on your company size, meaning your group size, will you or will you not be forced to offer health coverage for your group or face a penalty. Now, if you're under 50 employees, which I know many of our folks on this presentation are, this is of no concern yet. But if you're 50 and up, you can see on screen how over the next couple of cycles that mandate is brought to bear, and then you have to figure out if we're going to offer insurance, what are our costs going to look like? If we choose not to, what will those penalties look like? And what would the impact be on our company and our culture if we were to suddenly not offer a group plan? So those are questions that come down to each individual company and their own considerations. Now, one important thing to note is that there's a general feeling that the mandate line, that 50-employee line, will probably creep down. On the immediate horizon, we don't see it, but this law has already shown a propensity to change and evolve at will, or at random, maybe. And so, while we don't see it now, we can't make any guarantee, nor can anyone else, that that wouldn't suddenly happen, or maybe the runway, as it were, be shortened to that possibly ultimate result. In terms of how do you determine what your full-time number is, how many full-time employees do you have, it's not just full-time employees. There's a calculation known as the full-time equivalent. And in the interest of time, we only have 30 minutes. I'm not going to get into this in depth on the call now, but would be glad to with anyone offline after this if they'd like to. But basically, it's a test or a determination you run factoring in your number of part-time people, seasonal and so on, how they all in aggregate can combine to adding to your actual full-time equivalent number as the government's going to view it. So critical considerations. Obviously, as I just said, figuring out how many full-time employees you really have under the new calculation, the new law. If you offer health insurance, is it going to meet all the minimum requirements of the new law? Do you think any of your full-time employees will receive a premium tax credit or subsidy for state marketplace coverage, a subject we're going to get into in a few moments? What's your exposure to the penalties? And have you begun to plan for and implement your general compliance strategy? So again, this is a pretty high level because we don't have a lot of time during this presentation, but these are some of the salient questions to be thinking about. Next is reporting, and I'm going to touch on this only lightly because I do believe most of our participants here are in fact under 50 employee groups. But suffice it to say that along with the mandate comes reporting and compliance requirements. And on screen you can see, again, looking ahead over the next couple of cycles and based on group size, what exactly you need to be thinking about reporting to the IRS. And so at any rate, if you're under 50 at the moment, this is no thought to you unless something changes. But if you're over 50, this is going to be very, very central to abiding by the new law. Now, as I mentioned a few moments ago, it is widely expected that some form of reporting will be required of all employers in the perhaps not too distant future in order to facilitate operation of state marketplaces and enforcement of healthcare reform regulations. So again, if you're under 50 right now, you're not under any mandate, but it's pretty universal that the belief is that that 50 line is going to move down and that at any rate some degree of reporting is going to be incumbent on everybody. Again, I touched on that lightly because I don't believe most of our audience is over 50. So why don't we get into what I think is possibly most pressing for everyone, and that will be the cost drivers associated with healthcare reform. So what are they? I mentioned the individual mandate before and how that might impact your costs. But more direct impacts are, for instance, new taxes and fees that are going to be brought to bear for small group plans. And the expectation is this alone will be an increase of about 3.5% to 4%. And you can see on screen what some of those taxes and fees look like, how many dollars per person per year that might equate to. But these are not small numbers. When you multiply that by the number of your participants, this becomes a fairly big thing. Even bigger than that, the adjusted community rating, probably a phrase many of our folks on the call today have heard about. This is a very important thing. This is essentially the new pricing model that is replacing formerly actuarial tables or actuarial science. So going forward, instead of insurance carriers basing their risk and basing their pricing on many, many decades of data, really understanding their risk and being able to price with hopefully a commensurate degree of accuracy, now the adjusted community rating is what will be utilized. And among other things, it dictates a very firm compression of the age bands. What I mean by that is, before 2014, insurance carriers could price up to an 8-to-1 scale or ratio between the older and the younger participants, but that is now being squeezed to 3-to-1. And in a few moments, I'm going to show you a graph as to why that can be quite impactful, depending on what your group's demographics are. Other cost drivers, underwriting restrictions and the removal of many of them. Pre-existing conditions, for example, can no longer bar anyone from coverage, and just setting aside any moral arguments or considerations, just thinking about that from a business perspective. If you're an insurance carrier and you have to take anyone in any condition at any state, regardless of risk, you can see how that can be quite a cost driver for an insurance carrier, and therefore that has to be spread out in some fashion. So that facet ends up really affecting an entire insurance pool, for lack of a better phrase. Guaranteed issue and renewability tied to that. Underwriting criteria now is limited to very few things, whereas before it was more broad. Again, the insurance carrier is not as able to judge their risk, and therefore, again, from a business perspective, our supposition is they would aim high. Plan design mandates, that has to do with what's included in group medical plans. New essential benefits must be included. One noteworthy thing is maternity must be included in every plan, along with 9 other new components that are now mandatory. There are new deductible caps, elimination of annual benefit limits, maximum 90-day waiting period for extending benefits coverage. Many, many moving parts to the plan design changes, but in our view, all of them very potentially inflationary, and we are seeing, as we are a national company and are drawing from a national data set, we're seeing some evidence of these things moving the needle on cost pretty drastically in some cases. Not to be dramatic, but it is moving pretty heavily as tied to these pieces. Now, when I refer to the limited underwriting criteria, just to give you a picture of that, before this year, you can see on your left all these different components that an insurance carrier could use to judge risk, and again, now being squeezed down to 4 primary areas. The adjusted community rating, I did mention we'd show you a graph on that. If you look on your screen, the prior ratio of 8:1, you can see the younger to older in kind of a yellow color. And then in orange, the new community rating scale of 3:1. So you can see where if you have some participants who are in that younger demographic, basically they're the ones who, ironically enough, are going to see the sharpest inflation under the community rating. I say ironically enough because generally the younger folks use the system less, very generally, not always the case, but on average they don't go to the doctor as much, they're younger bodies, they don't use the system quite as much, but they indeed are going to be seeing the most inflation, and we in practice are already seeing that. Those on the older end of the scale, we've seen some evidence of some relief, but not much. So this is interesting. The younger scale has come up a lot. The older end of the scale, again, and generally speaking, has come down to a degree, or if not come down, maybe seen a mitigation of the escalation of their price increases. But again, depending on what your group demographics are, you can see how the community rating could be a very significant piece. Now, if you're an employer 50 and up, similar considerations apply. These are the same components I just went over. The salient point here is that though you may be under 50 employees and you don't have to care yet about compliance or reporting or the mandate, everybody has to care about the cost piece because that's going to affect everyone in the open marketplace. So whether you're 50 employees or up or lower than 50, the cost drivers are going to touch you one way or the other. So critical considerations: will new small group regulations increase your costs? The likely answer is yes, but you'll have to examine your own demographics. What impact will taxes and fees have on your cost structure? Can you modify your plan designs to offset expected cost increases? I'll pause on that one and just elaborate for a moment. Up till now, small groups generally contain their costs over the long term by modifying or tweaking their plan now and again, which is a euphemism for making the plan less rich now and then to outrun cost. But what's very interesting about healthcare reform is with all these new plan design mandates that command richer plans, it becomes much more difficult for an employer to modify plan designs significantly enough to offset cost increases. They've put a neat or an effective backstop on that traditional relief valve to price increase. Moving on, should you adjust employee contributions to offset higher costs? That's another thing you can look at, although, again, healthcare reform has put a bit of a backstop on that too, because there are affordability requirements that are brought to bear. So the amount of cost you can pass on to your employees is also now being somewhat limited, or limited indeed. Can you adjust your product or service prices to cover expected increase in expenses? That's a philosophical question. Can you, or would you want to? What impact would that have on your business? So that's something people will be looking at. Finally, state marketplaces, or exchanges as they're most commonly known. What are they? They're conduits established for individuals and small businesses to view, compare, and purchase health insurance. And these vary state by state. Subsidies for individuals are available on a sliding scale depending on one's earnings. They're unavailable to full-time equivalents if the employer offers a qualified plan. Small Business Health Options Program, or SHOP, this is businesses with 50 or fewer full-time equivalents. They're the ones eligible, but the access and product choices in this year are fairly limited. The impact to your business, employers relying on state marketplaces for employee medical coverage may be disadvantaged against their competitors, meaning the companies they compete against, in terms of the attraction and retention of top talent through a comprehensive benefit strategy. Simply to say that the marketplace plans may be somewhat less comprehensive, somewhat less rich than what you might have maintained up till now as your own small group plan, and what does that do to your standing in competition to get the people you want in your company. State marketplace medical plans may be viewed as lower quality solutions because many believe the marketplaces were developed to serve the uninsured and underinsured. So there's a perception component and a real component, and you sort of need to evaluate or think through both. State marketplaces may not provide a consistent health insurance solution for employees across multiple states. So if you're an employer with employees not just in North Carolina, but perhaps in Virginia or anywhere, if you have many states in play, the marketplace option could become a bit complicated. And finally, state marketplace products may be limited to medical, dental, and prescription only, requiring you to seek other solutions for ancillary insurance products. So it may not be a one-stop shop depending on how comprehensive a benefit plan your company is offering or wants to offer. So things to think about. Are you, as with all of them, are you prepared to provide your employees with required notifications? Are you adept with all of this enough to answer their questions? Because like it or not, most employees have over time become accustomed to going to their employer for guidance on benefits matters. So by default, they may be coming to you. So the more you know, the better. Are you aware that some of your employees could incur greater costs by purchasing coverage through the state marketplaces? So there could be cases where the marketplaces, though it's a bit of a fallback, for lack of a better phrase, that there may be some instances where the costs are actually greater. Are your employees prepared to purchase insurance on their own, which is to ask, are they knowledgeable enough with the market, with medical plans, with how to compare? Are they going to be able to navigate this on their own? And then finally, do you know if the state marketplaces are going to offer competitive products? And I hope you'll all forgive me. I'm going through this speedily because I know we only have 30 minutes, so we're compressing about 3,000 pages into not much time at all. But on screen here, and I'm not going to read all of them verbatim, but healthcare reform action items, depending on your group size, things to do, things to be aware of. And I'm going to go through these. And of course, this deck of slides will be very available to anyone on the call who'd like to reach out to me. Let me know if you'd like to have a copy of them, and I'll be very glad to send them to you. That way you can, if you'd like, you can go over them at a slower pace. Again, I'm going to just pause a moment on each of these so everyone can take a look. Lots of things to do. That's the theme. Lots to think about. And I'm sure many of you are working with brokers today who are quite knowledgeable and hopefully are being very proactive with you to shepherd you through all of this. So, your business strategy, probably to state the very apparent, but how will all of this influence your strategy to care for your employees and ensure the continued growth and success of your business? So this is, nothing could be probably more important than this. Examining strengths, weaknesses, threats, and opportunities on a continual basis is very important if you're running a business and you're seeking growth and success, which we all are. You just want to think through, it's more than benefits, it's more than cost. It relates to culture. It relates to what you're building in terms of a great place to work and how all of this ties together. How do you get the best people, both attracting and retaining? How do benefits tie into that? And how do you craft the best win-win solution for your business and for your people? That's really what this is all about. And it's not a simple topic, and there are many paths and many different considerations, both in the open broker market and in solutions such as my own company's, Insperity, as far as a non-brokered national pooled solution, which for some companies can be a good option. Not to delve into a commercial for us, because sometimes we're a great fit for a company and other times not, and we're very intellectually honest in either case. But what's different about our model is that we do indeed sponsor a national plan. It's a large employer plan. We literally aggregate or pool all of our national clients and their employees and their dependents onto our plan. We take on the compliance and the reporting liability wholly. We are very effective at containing costs for many, many reasons. And as far as the general complexity, we can really remove a lot of that. So again, none of this is meant to be a pitch for us, but do know that this is one possible option, and I would be very much more than happy to speak with anyone on this call offline at greater length and in greater detail and see if what we do might be helpful. Or if not, maybe propose something else and help shepherd you through this one way or another. So I put that out there and would be glad to do it. In terms of questions or reaching out to us for the copies of the slides or to have a chat about any of this, you can see my name there, my email and phone number and so on. And then my partner, Amanda Bokesh, and her contact information as well. So I think we're close to right on the money on 30 minutes. I hope this was valuable and helpful, and I thank you all for joining. And do forgive us once again for the troubles yesterday. And I'll very much look forward to speaking to any one of you if you'd like to following this. Have a great day.
Thank you, Jeff.
Sure. I hope it went okay.
Yeah.